Hey there, my name is Shane Craddock, and this is the Inner Edge podcast, where I share a different take on how to lead and live a sustainable, high-performance life. Over the course of different episodes, I'm going to challenge the belief that tension, stress, and struggle are essential to success and creativity. My experience is that there's an easier way, there's a better way, and indeed there's an essential way that we need to explore for the times that we live in. So let's go ahead, let's jump in and explore. Hi there, welcome to today's episode with myself, Shane Craddock. Today we're going to talk a little bit about how to use thought more constructively. And maybe without realising it, most people that I meet will talk about how thought causes damage. Insofar as that, maybe they're depressed or they're stressed or they're anxious or that they're annoyed that their mind is thinking certain things. But for this particular episode, what I want to talk about is the great things that thought can do and how do we use it more? Because using thought more consciously and constructively is the key really to creating a better life, a better job, a better business, better results in every aspect from my point of view. Now, just in case you're new to these podcasts and to what I talk about, I would encourage you to go back and listen to some of the earlier episodes to explain where I'm coming from. But obviously this podcast is called The Inner Edge. So we take very much the perspective of what's going on inside you and looking at how can you use, I suppose, the inner world elements to reflect in the outer world results. And that's very, very important because everybody has an inner life, and that inner life has a massive impact on the results in the outer world. The sporting world knows this. A lot of people in ordinary life know this, but there's still a lot of people who don't. And if you're one of those people who has recognized it, that's fantastic. But there's layers to it on the inner side. I suppose that's why we do the podcast. So one distinction I want to share with you here is you using thought versus thought using you. Okay, now looking at the first one, you using thought, I'm just going to throw out a couple of areas here to consider. The first would be affirmations. I'm not a massive fan of affirmations, but I do use them in certain contexts, almost in a very simple kind of a way. It's not kind of obsessive or forced, but just to give you an idea of where you can use thought more constructively. For example, if I find myself in a situation that I'm out of my depth, in over my head, I'll often now say to myself, almost like a mantra, I can handle this. I can handle this. I can handle this. Now, not walking around like a mad yoke, saying that to myself all the time, but I will sometimes just stop, take a breath and go, I can handle this. Something else that I've also caught myself saying to myself, and this wasn't always the way at all, by the way, I've had to kind of almost train myself to do this, is that I'll say, everything's working out the way it's meant to. And that's a way for me to help myself to accept reality. Because if you're human, you'll have certain wants and needs, and life doesn't work out that way all the time. And so life is going to give you difficult circumstances, stuff that your mind doesn't like. People will say things, do things that you won't like. And so the quicker you get in touch with reality and accept it, actually, the better, ironically, you can do. And for me, you could easily say to that, well, that's kind of being delusional. But I find myself, it's more to do with managing myself, managing my state, managing my inner world, and certainly focusing on some affirmations. And I think maybe if you think about it, you might have some that work for you. I know when I first started on this journey inside my inner world, one of the first ones that was given to me by my counsellor at the time, Morris, was, every day in every way, I'm getting better and better, which at times was difficult to digest, but actually it just distracted my mind as well from other bad things, especially when I was in the midst of very deep, dark depression. It was a distraction. But also, I can handle this. I can get through things. We are amazing as humans. We're incredibly resilient if we stop and just look at ourselves, regardless of what we're not getting right, what we're not doing right. We do a lot of things right, and we are incredibly resilient. That's for another day's conversation. The second thing, apart from affirmations, would be using your memory and your imagination in more constructive ways. Now, this is a big area that I think most people don't really fully see, understand, or use. It's something that I talk a lot about in my new book, The Inner CEO, which is coming out in the autumn. So stay tuned for that, especially if this area interests you. But just to give you a taste of how I use memory and my imagination in a constructive way at the start of my day, before my day begins, especially with work, I just take a few moments and I will recall a pleasant memory that actually has a feel-good factor to it, something real that happened to me. And I'll experiment. I collect memories as a hobby just to bring them up, to change my mood, to put me into the right frame of mind. And once I've done that, then I will imagine the day ahead and see it going the way that I want, see certain outcomes being achieved. Does that guarantee that that's what happens? No. But what it does mean is that there's a higher probability of success because I'm very focused and I'm telling my mind, which works like a missile, I'm saying this is what I want to create. And that's using thought constructively. The third one I'm going to give you here is one of my favorites, which is around questions. I mean, I think your mind, it works incredibly well with questions. And most of the time that we give it the wrong questions. The wrong question would be something like, why am I like this? Or I just got into a loop of analysis on yourself. And I am the world's expert on that from before. I don't like doing it anymore because it doesn't work. So what are better questions? Well, okay, what's the best use of my time over the next hour or the next day or the next week? What's the best that I can imagine from this situation? What are some new ways I could make money? How can I add more value in my job or in my business or to my customers? How can I use technology to raise the game? So there's unlimited questions here, but that's again a better way to use thought constructively. I mean, see, when you think about it, if you look at the world around you in terms of all the objects that we almost take for granted, like a phone, a laptop, whatever device you're listening to this podcast on, all of that started off as a thought, which is an idea in somebody's mind. And through their persistence, focusing on that thought, they brought it into reality in the outer world. But it started in the inner world as a thought. That just blows my mind. Like everything around us, our clothes, our cars, our homes. I'm looking at a chessboard here beside me. All that was an idea in somebody's head. Somebody bringing something into reality as an object. But we don't always think about it then in the context of using it for us in terms of how we are, in terms of our mood. Now, the other one that I mentioned as a distinction was thought using you. And there's good and bad to that. Now, just to give a very simple, fun example, on the bad side, we'll say, if you're driving a car and somebody does something when you're driving that you don't like, and your inner voice kicks off, and you start to lose your temper, or maybe you start cursing them. I know a couple of people who are very calm, pleasant people under normal circumstances. But when they get into a car, it's like this other character comes out. Or like a lot of people, you'll have thoughts at the back of your mind to do with people, how you see certain people, whether you like them, whether you don't like them. If you're going to meet somebody today, you probably have a thought at the back of your mind as to how that meeting's going to go, what's going to happen, whether you're looking forward to it or not. Other thoughts, where thought is using you, could be to do with the habit of worry, the habit of anxiety. These are habits, because ultimately, as you've heard me say before in other podcasts, there is a direct link between how you feel and how you think. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that is 100%. So whatever I'm feeling is 100% directly related to thinking. Not everybody's going to agree. Not everyone's going to agree with me there, but from my own explorations, it's 100%. I'm happy to be challenged on that. So have a think about that yourself, because you feel your thinking. Now, part of my job is to help people, I guess, to reset their thinking, to use their thinking in a more constructive way, to create better, whether that's in their businesses or as leaders or in their lives. I was only talking to somebody recently where it came up that there was an issue with their marriage, which can often happen. Nobody's immune to that. But what was very clear is that they were stewing on thinking that was kind of winding themselves up about their partner. And so to help them reset it, two things. One was I just started to ask them about the good things that their partner had brought into their life, the things that they were great at, the things that they loved about them. And you could see them visibly relaxed. And from my point of view, I'm just trying to help them use thought more constructively. To relax their mind, relax themselves so that they can get some perspective and they change their state. And when that happens, then better thoughts come in, because that is the other point, is that when Instead of trying to force yourself to think positively, like, for example, when I was depressed, that was the wrong advice. Very hard to force yourself. It actually sometimes makes things worse. What's better is to realize that thought is there, it affects your feeling. But what's fascinating to me is that when I relax my mind, my thinking naturally improves. And it seems to be the case for everybody that I explain this to. I wonder, can you see the same in yourself? Certainly would be worth looking at. So there's lots and lots of could go through here, but too much for this kind of podcast format. So bringing it back to questions, where might you be using thought deconstructively? Think about maybe where you're worried, where you're anxious. Just observe yourself there. Where could you use it more constructively? You might have got some ideas from what I've said today. And even as a little experiment, an inner experiment, could you observe yourself for a day or two and just see how thought is working through you all of the time? It's working through you in relation to people, your work, even your food choices, your eating habits, whether you can focus or not, whether it thinks you're disciplined or not. I mean, thought is just incredible. It's incredible. But we are thinking beings. And thought, without a doubt, is hugely creative. And it allows us to create a world of possibilities. We live in a world of possibilities. But if you don't fully understand that thought is the creative mechanism and it can be leveraged hugely. Indeed, like that is the way that it is used by great entrepreneurs, great achievers, great artists, great leaders. They at some level, they understand that it's thought and how they use it, how they shape it with their mind, that allows us to shape better futures. The problem, of course, is if it gets into the wrong hands, it can equally cause a lot of damage. So the character of that person of who's using thought is incredibly important, of course. But coming back to you and to close it out, thought is one of your greatest gifts as a human being. And I'm encouraging you here to be a little bit more conscious in using it. That's it for this week. Ciao for now.